Hi, my name is Danielle Catani, and as part of my class on lifespan development, I created a presentation on autism spectrum disorder. Autism spectrum disorder is considered a group of neurodevelopmental disorders of the brain. Characteristics of ASD can include difficulty with social interaction, such as isolation, difficulty with grammar, and taking turns with conversation. It also includes difficulty with verbal and nonverbal communication. Nonverbal communication examples would be difficulty with reading facial expressions and body language. Repetitive or restrictive behaviors are also examples of characteristics of ASD. Autism spectrum disorder is shown to affect 1 in 59 children, with 1 in 5 of those being boys. This is from the CDC 2018 study on the prevalence of ASD. This shows that boys are nearly 4 times more likely to be diagnosed with ASD than girls. Currently, there is no medical test that can detect ASD. There's also no cure for ASD. However, there are different interventions that can be provided to children with ASD. These include therapy such as speech and language. They also include medications that are used to treat the symptoms of ASD and alternative treatments such as massage therapy. The diagnostic criteria for ASD contains 3 main parts. Social interaction and communication deficits are the first. These include abnormal social approaches, such as difficulty reading social cues from other people. Can also include over or under sensitivity to stimuli, such as chaotic environments and noises. Children with ASD tend to have difficulty understanding nonverbal communication, such as facial expression, reading body language, and they also have a difficulty maintaining relationships with an inability to be able to interpret what others may be thinking or wanting. They've also been shown to have deficits in symbolic and cooperative play. The second and third are cognitive and executive function deficits. These are evidenced by restricted or repetitive behaviors and fixated interest on things such as obsessing over video games or art or placing objects or toys in a certain position. Children with ASD also tend to be inflexible or resistant to change, and these two things can create a situation where the child is triggered and the symptoms that are showing for their specific diagnosis of ASD may be enhanced. These also include repetitive motor movements such as tics and other repetitive tasks. There are many disorders associated with ASD. These can include ADD, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. They also include developmental delays, depression, and anxiety. With the many symptoms that are out there and the broad spectrum of these disorders, they are labeled between mild, moderate, and severe. Children with the diagnosis of mild ASD tend to be higher functioning and they do need some support. The diagnosis of moderate is autism, is the category where children display that they need substantial support. However, on the other end of the spectrum is severe ASD. This is a very low functioning autism, and these children tend to need significant supports with activities of daily living and in school. In researching the biological information on autism, it was of interest to note that children with ASD tend to have a greater brain weight and volume. Brain scans have been performed on children with and without autism and have shown different brain structure and shape in the autistic children. Research also shows that heredity and genetics can play a role in the prevalence of autistic spectrum disorder. These can include exposure to teratogens in utero, as well as defects in genes that are secondary to environmental exposure, such as tobacco, alcohol, and even pollution and some viruses. This is a copy of a brain scan performed on a child with autism, and it is compared to one in a child that does not have autism, and as you can see, there are significant differences. Research shows that children with ASD have cortical thinning in their left hemisphere. This is the hemisphere of the brain that is associated with social functioning and imitation. They've also noted that children with ASD have smaller amygdala, and this is also a portion of the brain that is associated with social functioning. The larger brain volume of a child diagnosed with ASD is said to be the result of a lack of pruning of the neural connections that would be occurring during early childhood. Regarding the treatment of ASD, the most important thing is to be sure you have interventional plans. These plans should be based on the child's specific needs because the spectrum is so wide, there are many symptoms and there are many needs. Different types of therapy that can help a child diagnosed with ASD include speech and language therapy and behavioral intervention. Medications have also been shown to be beneficial in children with ASD. These medications do not treat ASD, but they do treat the associated medical issues, which can include anxiety, insomnia, depression, and impulsivity. Another service available to children with ASD is skills-based training, and this can be provided through school services. And the benefits of this are that it enhances the child's independence and self-esteem, as well as helps them learn how to build and maintain relationships with peers and other people. The theory of mind, when applied to autistic spectrum disorder, shows that children without ASD are able to predict, interpret, and make sense of other people's behavior. They are also able to separate their own beliefs from that of another person. The concept is that theory of mind is triggered by social interaction, which is something that is restricted in children who are diagnosed with ASD. They are unable to read social cues. They are unable to report on their own mental state, and secondary to that, they are also unable to report on another person's mental state. In researching ASD, I came across many famous people and successful people who have been diagnosed with this disorder. Person of note would be Satoshi Tajiri, who was the creator of the Pokemon video game. He was diagnosed with ASD. One of the characteristics that he showed from a very young child was a fixation on bugs. He actually studied them and collected them throughout his childhood. He ended up flunking out of high school. But at the age of 17, he became the writer and editor for Game Freak magazine. And this catapulted him into being able to take his fixation on bugs and create animated creatures, which in turn created his game Pokemon. He spent 6 years creating Pokemon based off of this fixation, presented it to Nintendo, and Nintendo has sold this Pokemon game in every nation. They stated that Satoshi is exceedingly creative, reclusive, and eccentric, all of which tend to be characteristics of somebody with high-functioning ASD. Truly, Santoshi shows that ASD does not have to be an obstacle to success. When applying theory of mind to Santoshi's situation, we can see that he did have compulsive behavior with his strong fixation on studying bugs. He was shown to have difficulty with nonverbal communication, such as reading other people's body language, and had difficulty reading social cues, tending to be more isolative. He was also described as eccentric, but extremely creative and intelligent. Those three characteristics are associated with high-functioning autistic spectrum disorder. The bottom line is that he was able to overcome these social obstacles, and word has it that his creation of Pokemon in the setting of being able to have multiplayer, where people are either able to interact with each other, has created an outlet for other children with ASD so that they can learn how to socially interact. To find more information on ASD, you can go to the Autism Speaks organization website. They provide resources as well as community support. You can also visit the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. They provide information and resources, and both of these links can be clicked on. And I appreciate your time, and I hope you enjoyed and learned more about autism spectrum disorder. Thank you.